Freehold is a 2017 release psychological horror thriller directed by Dominic Bridges.
Yes, it's the story of Hussein, who's played by Mim Sheikh, who is a London estate agent. He lives in a bachelor pad flat. When the film opens, we see him getting ready for work, his morning routine, putting on a hideous suit and heading out. And after he's gone, we're left with the empty flat, and then somebody creeps out from behind a door and starts, using his stuff, eating his food, washing themselves, using his toothbrush, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, basically this guy is hiding in the wall cavity of Hussein's flat because he doesn't have anywhere else to go. As the film progresses, we find out that he was trying to rent a flat through Hussein, and it fell through at the last minute because Hussein got somebody who wanted to pay more money. So this guy and his girlfriend were sort of left with nothing because they'd already given notice at their previous place, so they were going to be homeless. Yeah, so it's not really established how he's found his way into the flat. Doesn't really matter, I suppose. He's living there, and when Hussein's out, he eats a bit of his food and just generally does stuff that's unpleasant, and progressively gets more unpleasant as the film goes on. Yeah, to get revenge on him, and also, like I said, because he doesn't have anywhere else to live. And I should mention that in other countries, particularly the States, the film's called Two Pigeons, which doesn't make a lot of sense at first, but it's actually because there's two pigeons that land on the windowsill outside the flat, and he sort of creates little voices for them, a little story for them, pretending that they're him and his girlfriend, and that's how we kind of learn his backstory through these two pigeons. Otherwise, because basically it's the only way that they could do it. Otherwise, the guy's going to be talking to himself in the flat. So yeah, that's the significance of the two pigeons.
I'm quite glad they changed the name actually, because
Yeah.
I kept thinking of Pigeon Street every time I saw that title, which wasn't working for me because that Pigeon Street wasn't very horrific.
Not really, no.
Depending on what you've been smoking beforehand, of course, I don't know. So so Freehold. I don't know if I'd heard of this film. Obviously, you suggested we watch it. Did I? Was it at Fright Fest?
Yeah, it was at Fright Fest, I think, in 2017. Yeah,
when it was released, obviously.
Yeah.
Clever.
Yes.
So no, I hadn't. I don't think I'd heard of it. So we have established many times on this channel that I'm quite hard to please when it comes to horror. So I watched it. The first time I watched it, I was half asleep, and I didn't really like it. And then I watched it again because it's interesting because it follows a pattern that I quite like in cinema. I like it sounded like quite a few other films I like within this genre. It sounded a little bit like Bug.
Yep.
The William Friedkin one with Michael Shannon when he's like holed up in a motel room. He starts to kind of lose his mind a little bit. And then you've got films like, this kind of reminded me of a film called The Vagrant with Bill Paxton, which is an early 90s, very odd little film where he's Bill Paxton's buying this new house, and then there's this Michael Ironside plays this tramp who starts squatting in his house. So that sounded very similar to this one. And then also films like Repulsion and The Tenant by Polanski, which are kind of films set in apartments with people going mad. So the idea of this, I thought, that sounds like my street. And I love psychological thrillers and horrors much more than kind of zombie horror and things like that. And I think there's lots of interesting things going on in this. It didn't completely work for me. One of my biggest gripes actually was the fact that the stranger living there, he does quite nasty things to the guy who owns the flat. But then the guy who owns the flat himself is he kind of lives in squalor himself.
He does,
piles of dishes everywhere and pizza boxes out, and he sits there masturbating over porn movies at night, and he doesn't really take care of himself. And I kind of thought, had he been maybe a little bit cleaner, maybe, I don't know, maybe not quite as clean as Christian Bale in American Psycho, but if he was a cleaner character,
just had a tidy flat
or a tidy flat, that may have worked a little bit more for me. It's pretty revolting at times. There's a couple of moments in there that really make you gag if you don't like that kind of stuff, which is fine. Obviously Brain Dead makes me gag a couple of times, and I love that. I think what really didn't work for me was this kind of comedy. I find this kind of comedy a little bit childish. Some of it to me felt very childish, which for me ruined it, because I would have loved to have seen it just kind of stick as being a dark film.
Yeah.
You know, and I sometimes feel that they almost lose faith in themselves if they have to kind of veer over into comedy. Okay, yes, that's probably the director's choice for that, and that's fine. I just personally would have. I thought it had some really interesting ideas in there. I love, what's his name, Botet? What's his
Javier Botet.
Javier Botet. I thought his performance was actually really good.
Yeah.
He's very strange. He moves strange. I think he's appeared in things like The Conjuring.
Yeah, he's kind of like like Doug Jones, where he's
Jones.
Often under heavy makeup and in prosthetics and things, because he's very thin and tall and has quite long limbs, and that he obviously works well under prosthetics.
Yeah, so I thought he worked really well, and although some of it, again, a lot of the filming techniques felt quite almost like music videos. A little bit Nicholas Winding Refn, a little bit Gaspar Noé, lots of kind of fast cutting and colours, and a couple of those moments I thought possibly you could have dropped them. I didn't feel quite why you needed to have them in. A little bit maybe stylised over substance, I don't know. It was kind of a little bit hit and miss for me. The guy playing the chap who owns the place, Hussein. I think he did I think it was his first film because he's introducing him. I think he did an okay job.
I think he was really good. Yeah.
I thought some of the acting. There's a scene where his girlfriend comes back, which I thought just dragged on, and because the acting wasn't entirely spot on, it just felt like it was dragging to me.
I mean, to me, I felt that the start gets a little bit repetitive because you keep seeing Hussein going to work and the guy coming out and doing things. Once the girlfriend comes along, he does things that kind of pit them against each other. And they're blaming each other for what's for things that are happening in the flat. As far as they're aware, there's nobody else there. For me, then it made it a little bit more interesting. Of course, Hussein starts to he starts to get ill from all the things that Orlando's doing, and he also starts to lose his mind a little bit because he's like, I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it started to get interesting, and again, that seemed to be edging more towards what I like in those kind of films where the guy starts to lose his marbles. There's some nice cuts here and there, and there's a couple of quite fun ones, and there's some great stuff with Javier, in the flat, and there's a great shot when one of them's on the bed and he's under the bed and he sticks his limbs out, he stretches, which I thought is a great looking shot. It was very funny, and that was kind of a nice sight gag that really worked for me. I actually wish they'd done more with Javier, because I think he's got a really interesting kind of look and frame and physicality, which a lot of the time he's kind of hiding behind the wall, like between the wall space and behind beds and sofas and under beds and behind sofas, which is great. I do wish they kind of could have maybe played, because there's a lot of visual stuff in there. Clearly the director's got he's got an interesting visual mind. And I do wish at times maybe they played, I kept thinking of that scene in Alien 3 when the alien, it's kind of, you look at a pipe and you're not sure whether you're looking at the alien or a pipe. And of course it's the alien. And I kind of wished, I mean obviously there's not a huge amount of scope in a flat, but I kind of wish they'd maybe played a little bit more with the surreal body of this guy. Maybe he could have been a lamp, lampshade. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. Who knows? But no, I mean, I didn't hate the film.
No.
And I thought there was some interesting stuff in there. I didn't like the comedy, but that's just me. I found it immature, and I wish they'd steered clear of that.
I mean, it's kind of billed as a horror comedy, but it's not that. It's not really a horror film, I wouldn't say.
It's not really a horror film.
And it's not really a comedy either.
No,
it
there's
has
a lot
funny
of gags
lines in it,
there.
but
I mean, I think the trouble in this country is obviously, with any genre and country, you get a big hit with something, and then you get a lot of imitations. And obviously, our big one in the last, I mean, it's almost 15. Almost 20 years ago now, is Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
And that's the big horror comedy from this country that was hugely successful. But I think the interesting thing with those guys, they were established comedians. They'd done Spaced, and they knew how to comedy kind of. And obviously, some people love the comedy in this, and that's fine. But comedy has to hit good timing. It's really well timed and stuff. And I often think if that doesn't. If it doesn't always hit that mark, it doesn't work for me. But again, that's
depends
entirely,
what you find funny, doesn't it?
That's entirely subjective at the end of the day, isn't it? So, but no, I thought this had some interesting things in it. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, no, I did. That's why I suggested it, because I'd already seen
Obviously.
it and I liked it. And I thought, it's an interesting little, was he indie film?
Yeah.
From the UK, and a simple idea with a small cast in one location, and sometimes those films, can be the most interesting. We did Cop Car the other week, which obviously has lots of locations, but is still quite a simple idea and has a small cast. Obviously, it includes Kevin Bacon, so it's not a low budget as such, but lower than a big Hollywood blockbuster. So and sometimes the simplest films sometimes end up being the most interesting.
Yeah, I mean, was it Buried, which is just Ryan Reynolds in a box for the entire film.
And you've got Locke with Tom Hardy as well, and just in the car for the whole film. So no, I mean, I think. I mean, he said it's got a bit of style over substance, and I can see what you mean. A lot of the shots are maybe a bit over stylized. I mean, right at the start, when he's getting ready, there's like he's just eating some cereal, and he's like in silhouette against like the blinds, which obviously got sort of a sunrise behind it, and it's like all he's doing is just eating some cereal, but it's quite a nice looking shot for such a simple, basic thing. But I think that's the thing, because a lot of the things are mundane that are happening. Some of the time, and also you're working with one location. You've got to make the shots look different, otherwise you're constantly looking at the same thing all the time. Hussein has lots of lights around his lounge, like behind the TV and things, and which some people do, but without that it would look very boring. So I think and maybe that's why he's a bit messy, because again it makes it look, there's more to look at, it makes it a bit more interesting. And it gives the flat a lived-in feel as well, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I take your point about him. He doesn't really know. I mean, that's why he doesn't notice anything is amiss, because he just lives like a slob anyway.
That's
so
true. Yeah, that's true.
But no, I mean, it's a wonder he doesn't get ill anyway, because he like reuses tea bags that have been sit there for days on end, and reuses. Plates and bowls and things that have just been sat in the sink for who knows how long. But and I think the other thing is, obviously at the start you're sympathising with Orlan, because I've rented for a long time, and estate agents, well, some of them, they're perfectly fine. There are those out there that are unscrupulous and have no morals and just don't care. They just care. They care about their commission. That's it. And obviously that's how we're set up. We're set up to sympathise with Orlan and not care about Hussein. But as the film progresses, I think because what Orlan does sort of escalates, and obviously Hussein's life is starting to be affected quite a lot by it, I felt myself sort of like, okay, he's had enough now, leave him alone. I caught myself sympathising with the estate agent, which I didn't expect.
I kept thinking of that scene in Trainspotting, when Renton goes to London. I think he becomes does he become a estate agent, and he goes into a flat, and then you get a couple of them there in a cupboard on the wall, and they burst out of the cupboard onto him. I kept seeing that scene when I was watching it. So I would recommend this. You go on IMDb. There's a big split on this film. There's a lot of people who really like it, and then there's a lot of people who really hate it. Not many in betweeners. I was originally, when I watched it the first time, I was going to sit in the really haters pile, but I think kind of going in between. It's grown on me a little bit. I think it's a nice original idea, which is nice, and that's one thing I think Britain is good for is kind of, especially when it comes to horror or thrillers. We're often we come up with original ideas. You go way back to the 70s and things like Hammer and Amicus and all those great horror studios. They had some quite interesting original ideas, and I think there are, whether I like them or not personally, I think there are some interesting. We've done a couple on this channel. I haven't always been favourable to them, but I think at the end of the day there are some original ideas coming out, and I think it's nice that this country continues to do that. And and I suppose what's also nice about this film is it features a predominantly, apart from Javier, I think he's Spanish, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, we have an Asian cast on the film, which is something that you rarely get. Well, you're seeing more of nowadays. I have to say, over the last maybe 5-6 years or so, it's starting to change, which is really good, because it's giving other cultures from this country a chance to be on screen as well. But we have it on DVD. You have it. It's not Blu-ray, is it? It's DVD.
It's DVD. You can't get it on Blu-ray, but it was released in the UK. I'm not sure. I couldn't figure out whether it was actually released physically in the US or not. I think it's on Amazon Prime over there. Obviously, as Two Pigeons, I think.
Is it on Amazon Prime here?
It is now, yeah.
Did I watch it on Amazon Prime? I think I did watch it on Amazon Prime.
I watched it a year or so ago. I think it was on Now TV, and then it's disappeared off there. So I thought I'll pick up the DVD because I fancy watching it again. I thought maybe we could do it. And then after I bought it, of course, it appeared on Amazon Prime. So, but yes. But now I can watch it whenever I want, even when it disappears off Amazon Prime. But there's no features. There's over the end credits, there's like a monologue from Hussein about being an estate agent and things like that. And it's almost like a poem. But the full version is on there as an extra.
Right.
And that's it, there's nothing else.
So that was Freehold, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Yep, hit the subscribe button up there if you've enjoyed what you've watched, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram. And join us next week for another one.